last boxing anything we discussed was the first Canelo Triple G,
which
and
Triple G won.
You were just totally confused that it wasn't unanimously Triple G victory.
He won.
And
he won that fight.
I told you. I recall this. I told you that Canelo was masterful, and your head exploded. You couldn't handle that. You couldn't process that. He was a master at his craft. It was clear that he had so much in his arsenal.
Did we see the same fight? He got beaten up almost the entire fight. No one thinks that Canelo won that fight. People say he may have won the second fight, which I'll give you. Now, they may fight for a third time, potentially. But the problem is, Canelo, I don't know if you're aware of this, Canelo's going up to cruiserweight.
No, not aware of it, but I did watch that first fight, and I thought he displayed so much control, right? But it's irresistible force, immovable object kind of a vibe.
Let me say something. You have always been thoughtful about boxing, and that actually is part of the questions. Look, I've written up questions. I've researched, dude. I've taken this seriously.
Show me your notes.
Oh, they're great. They're look at them. Look at them. Look at them. Todd Turnham. Look at.
Oh my gosh, you can read that.
Yeah, no, I. But you've always.
I just read your notes, and I still have no idea what we're in for or what we're doing.
Okay? I'm gonna say this. You've always been thoughtful about boxing. Because I remember when you and I first met, which is where we're going to circle back to in a second, but when you and I first met, it was a Foreman, Tommy Morrison time. And they fought, and I remember you said to me, after they fought, we talked about it, then they fought, and then we saw each other at a show, the week later, and you came up to me, "Oh, dude, that was some great boxing." And I was like, what the hell is he talking about? What's he? And then later, years later, probably 5 years later, I wrote you an email. And I was like, dude, what were you talking about that one night about that being great boxing? And you wrote me 2 solid paragraphs explaining the gravitas of that event and why it was important that Tommy Morrison fought the way that he fought. Everyone thought, because he had no chin, that Foreman was going to knock him out. Yet Tommy Morrison boxed. And that's always sort of stuck with me about you, your thoughtfulness.
It's interesting. I don't remember that at all. I do remember. Celebrating George's victory when he won the title back.
When
Michael Moore. Yeah, and I. At that time, for some reason, I was so excited about that.
I was too.
I reacted it I don't know. I was.
Well, he got totally beat up the whole fight.
Elated that he won. I don't know. Maybe it was just. I can't recall why it was so special or meaningful at that time, but I really felt like it was. So yeah, I guess I was invested in boxing. But that's gone. I don't know who's in it or what's happening or.
Well, let me tell you this. Now, and you probably aren't surprised by this, there is, right now, there's boxing on YouTube from a DAZN show. I don't know if you've heard of DAZN. You know it?
No.
DAZN, okay, so everything is platforms now. So it's DAZN, ESPN Plus, and then, there's Fight TV, and that's kind of coming up. And then there's still traditional Showtime and Showtime pay-per-view, but
this all sounds terrible.
Oh well,
How do you?
Yeah, that's the problem. What you're gonna say is the problem. Here's how you keep up. You go to Fight News and you pick 1 or 2 podcasts to listen to, and that's how you stay up. But you can't watch everything.
Yeah,
it's impossible.
And I don't think I want to. I see it differently. I think.
Really? Why though? Why? You mean see it differently from how it's not like how it was when it was just HBO and Showtime and we knew where to go to get our content?
Wow, I just think the impact that it had in like historical kind of purposes, like how it was so uplifting and it changed lives and it changed perceptions and it did so much before. And it's hard for me to see all of those upside things when I think I'm just probably more sensitive to the potential damage that people are subjecting themselves to, that kind of thing.
So you didn't used to see that back, like watching back in the early '90s when you and I were talking about all this stuff. You didn't.
No, it was no, it was like it was amazing stories, and there was back then it just wasn't so far removed from like these all-time greats and these amazing stories, and it just was fresh, I think. So it was like romanticized, and for good reason.
Well, you might have, considering this, you might have, I don't know if a problem is the word, but like, about the YouTube fighters, like the Jake Pauls and the Logan Pauls and fighting Floyd Mayweather and I mean, that is, and hey, the Paul brothers are taking the sport seriously. They're training with real people. But it's all a circus. But I think that anybody that knows boxing in any way knows the difference between Jake Paul versus Floyd Mayweather, and you have, like, for instance, last weekend, Devin Haney taking on Jojo Diaz, which was like a major fight, or the recent big upset, George Kambosos beating Teofimo Lopez, which those names probably mean
nothing. Who are you talking about? Yeah. I have no clue who you're even talking about. Okay. And if it's a celebrity boxing thing, I might be better, actually. I was invested. I watched like Floyd, prime of his career. I watched him have these fights and felt ripped off somehow. Now, I totally appreciate this guy's ability to not be hit, okay? But I hated it. It just wasn't, it didn't seem like a fight. It was like he was so good that, like even Canelo couldn't really kind of penetrate and make it a fight. He was never.
Oh no, Canelo was never in it.
Jeopardy. Right, and so I was like, this is terrible. And I think that was really how, it was easy to like separate and stop paying attention, because like this guy's clearly the best. Nobody fights the way that he does. And he's an all-time great for sure.
So you never got caught up in the idea of, hey, he could maybe lose this fight, or he could maybe or you just clearly saw, hey, he's the best and this is all going to be kind of boring and hand-picked opponents and there's no point.
It was boring. His fights were.
Come on, it's artful. Boring. It's skill.
Well, no, yeah, I get it. I totally get it. I appreciate that, but like paying for it, I will not. So for some reason, I'd rather see blood and guts and like two guys that aren't as skilled have a more even fight, because then there's just you're seeing so much more.
A Gotti Ward type of situation. Mickey Ward.
Well, there's nothing better than that, right? That's yeah. So yeah, of course, I'd rather see that.
Okay, now I'm going to start dialing this back a little bit, and we're going to move to the hardcore a little bit. One of the last times we saw each other was at a like Outspoken was playing with like one of their singers. It wasn't John. And then
no, it was the New Age thing at or the Amp.
No, but this was before that. Before that, we hadn't seen each other in a while, and like it was Youth of Today was headlining, and you looked different, and I didn't recognize you.
House?
Yes, at the Glass House, and you were yelling things, funny things. And I didn't recognize you. So I talked to you a little bit, but you looked different. And then later you told Andrew, like, hey, I saw Evan and he didn't recognize me. And I just laughed. And that's when I realized, wait, that was Todd.
Was yelling things for you to observe?
Well, you were yelling things about, like, this would be better if Ice was playing. Like, it was all just, like, funny, like, stuff. And I looked at you and you were like, you had kind of a gleam in your eyes, but you just looked different. Plus, you may have been clean shaven, which maybe it wasn't you, but it had to have
It
been
happens, and it does happen sometimes. Yeah, of course I would yell at you. You
you.
wouldn't recognize me? I mean, are you kidding? I was surprised I wasn't like blasting Ice lyrics. You know?
Well, which goes to what is actually the first question. Okay, I've known you for a while, and we
Yeah.
talked and all this stuff, and then there was a show in Long Beach with 108. They were headlining Mean Season and Strife. I walked in and you were playing guitar, and I was like, that guy plays guitar and he's in Strife now, and I was like, I've always wondered, why weren't you always the guy? It seemed like they always knew you. So how did that happen? How did getting into Strife happen?
Oh, well, they didn't. I knew Chad first before Chad knew anybody else in the band.
Okay.
And then in high school, I was a little rambunctious and didn't really know how to put my best foot forward. So, so I ended up going to a boarding school actually for my second year of high school, and that's when the band started to the guys, met each other, and like so. I went to a a very rustic boarding school for 1 year. It didn't curb my rambunctiousness, so I
What was
wasn't
that
allowed to go
school
back
like?
for a second year.
Like,
They said, sorry.
what was that school like? I mean, can you describe like were you so you're away from home, or is it like the facts of life? Like, I mean, what are we like?
No,
Or
there's no Tootie, no Mrs. Garrett, no Joe. It was so rustic that if you wanted to heat water, you had to start a fire in basically these areas where so we called them shower fires, but really they were water tanks built around stoves,
oh wow,
large stoves. You heat your room, you have a stove in your room. So think, mountain cabins, and that's it. Nothing else. College preparatory vibe. So founded by Paul Squibb, who ended up being like a pharmaceutical giant. That happened in like 1932, and the school largely is the same. So,
oh wow.
it was like when you go there. I mean, I don't know how much it's evolved. I think it's evolved into something even more special as like the curriculum and focus is changed to sustainability and in farming and different things like that, which they didn't have when I went. But you needed an axe. You needed steel toe boots. You could be making a fire, and it could be your responsibility to make warm water for a quad or your area where you lived in school, which was cabins.
Was that by
So
design, kind of like an outdoor bound sort of school experience, or no?
not exactly. No, it was very strong on education and the curriculum, and that I think that part of that rustic part of it was like stripping away or not attaching things that are distractions, right? So it was a really helpful thing for me. Like I know that I learned the most. I think that was really the best educate like high school education year that I had, for sure. The school size students was like 80 we were like 80 students, and you had responsibilities, and like so it was a way to grow up. It was like that cliche thing of separating wants and needs, and like real sense of community. And so there were so many positive takeaways that they just didn't want to change it back then, and that was not something I had. I came back a different person, and so that was in a good way.
And did
But
you
still,
say
that
that
like
they didn't want you back for a second year, or you chose not
right.
like?
Yeah, I remember the conversation. They said at this time of the year we typically invite. I should have been expelled, right? Like that's the truth, is that I entertain myself in, different ways, I guess. And so, explosions might be funny, right? Like, yeah. And they
Especially
still
around
like,
the shower fires. I'm sure that they love that. I'm sure that they.
yeah, I mean, there was like stuff burned. Yeah. I mean, for fun. I mean, you're going to school, by the way, 6 days a week, right? So Monday through Saturday, you're just so engaged there that when you have that time away, I don't know, you don't want to just stare at the wall or squander it. I mean, there's so much to do. Truthfully, hiking, and like they had so much, they offer so much. It was a really great experience, but really they said that's enough of you, you know. Maybe off, off interview, I'll tell you some of the stuff I did, but that's it. It's hard to think about and not feel terribly guilty about, the pranks or whatever I pulled on some people there.
So then you knew Chad, and so you knew Chad like from elementary school, or you knew
No,
Chad?
from freshman year of high school,
Gotcha.
and that didn't go so well. So I left from the second year of school, and when I came back, Chad was. And when I left, he was like Led Zeppelin T-shirt, just got a guitar. I don't think he knew how to play anything, and wanted to learn. Came back, and he was the guy that was like, "I'm listening to this. Check this out. Here's some different stuff."
And that
And
was like what kind of bands at that time? Because you and I are like the same age, so I'm trying to figure out if were we listening to that at the same time?
well, I think I got, at that school, I got a little taste for some stuff pre-chat, I would say. There was a guy there, Peter, and he was a senior at the school, and he had 7 seconds. He had like Agent Orange, and he had like, there was some different stuff that I hadn't heard, and so I started listening to different stuff there. But then when I got back, I had no idea there was a scene. I didn't know how you act, like the access, how you got involved, or any. I had no idea.